get past that, the halfway point to that, onto 22 now with the win.
They got to 40 points on
with the win against
still
Norwich.
A long way off.
Is that still what you look at, 40 points?
No, I'd said all along, being consistent with my message to my players. Onto the next game, you got it, of points. Keep adding to it. That's what I was delighted. I thought it was a huge result for us at Norwich, because there's a lot of disappointed players and supporters after the Thursday night game against Newcastle. I'm not sure how disappointed they should be, really, because of the team that we were coming up against. You know, one that had, I think, a 10th place finish and a 13th place finish, and is an established Premier League club, and just one of those nights. But always is the next game, and something we've been pretty good at is a reaction to defeat. It took us a little bit longer than I wanted it to, in terms of a second half proper Sheffield United performance, but you know, it was I was delighted with the reaction, and as I said, onto, you know, one defeat in 8, one defeat in 9, which is really good. And I think everybody talks about, you know, back-to-back defeats, and if we'd obviously suffered that at Norwich, then, you know, it becomes a little bit more difficult.
Was it even more significant off the back of some of the recent results, because you played so well in some of the games and drawn them when you probably deserved to win, and then against Newcastle you lost the game but you could easily have won it?
Well, ultimately you get out of a game what you deserve, and people can talk through rose-tinted glasses, and suppose I've got caught up in that a little bit, but you know, the results are what we got for a reason. You know, were we good enough in that 10-minute period against Manchester United to see the game out or take it from 2 to 3? But we've set really high standards, and I've always said, you know, gaining points, I'll not try that word again, gaining points in the Premier League is really tough and precious. So it was a huge 3 points for us on Sunday afternoon.
You're 7 points better off than Villa at this stage of the season. There was a lot of investment at Aston Villa in the summer, more continuity here. What have you made of the job that Dean Smith has done there? Well,
obviously the run that Dean had when he took charge at Villa was brilliant. Was an outstanding run to, I think, club records were broken here, there and everywhere. And know Dean well, know the work that he did at Brentford, and obviously going into Villa. And everybody talks about, you know, these managers that are boyhood fans, but I can tell you that he would have been under huge pressure, and the pressure that he put under himself to gain results, being a Villa fan. So to do it in the manner that he did was outstanding. It was a really tight game, obviously, that Championship player final, and delighted for Dean and his players. And whatever way any club goes is up to them, and what finances they've got, and what he thinks fit, and how he feels that where they need to improve or they need to strengthen. And every club's different. Their club's different to ours. So we do what we do, and Dean had to do what he had to do. So you know, we're looking at this as a great game. It's obviously familiarity between both clubs. Goals last year. You know, two outstanding games of football. The home game was as good as we played for a long time at Bramall Lane. According to our supporters, for years and years, it was a fantastic game of football, and we were outstanding on the day. I think it just shows you, you know, the fighting spirit that Villa had in that period to come down back from 3-0 down. We'd look at it from our point of view, a little bit self-inflicted because the game was done, but it shows you that what Villa have in their squad, and it can't be underestimated.
Was that one of the toughest results to take of your managerial career at Villa last season?
Yeah, it was an interesting 25 minutes in the change room afterwards. I stepped foot in it after about 15 of them, and it was quite lively. It's quite interesting, but players care and do what they need to do. It didn't go over the top, and words were said, and there was a few actions as well in there, but that's what happens, part and parcel of a change of room. And it was a disappointing end to what was, on the whole, an outstanding performance for us for 85 minutes. To go to Villa Park and play against Villa and the players that they've got under the lights and to be in that position was it was difficult. But as we talked about after the Newcastle game, the reaction of the players and everybody was first class, and we obviously use that as a springboard to go on another decent run, which ultimately gained us promotion.
Dean Henderson took a bit of criticism after the game at Villa last season, then again earlier this season against Liverpool, and there was a bit of debate about the criticism and whether it was too harsh at the time. Has it been vindicated in his performances since? The reason I ask is because we are going to be speaking to Dean later.
Well, you have to ask him, but I'm not interested in what critics and pundits say or criticise me in terms of my action. It's an opinion, and as we've said before, the Premier League, because of the exposure it gets and the amount of people that have the say on the division and on individual teams, individual players and managers is huge. So it's part and parcel of being involved. And if you don't want to be in it, if you don't want to be involved in it, then you need to take yourself out of it. But that's it. And you got to, from my point of view, Dean has been outstanding in his time here, and he's still a young goalkeeper. They'll make mistakes, and I know my players, as I said all along, better than anybody else, and I've said this all along as well. I'm the biggest supporter as well, so I'm a huge Dean Henderson fan, and he's got an unbelievable future ahead of him. We'd like him to obviously mistakes to a minimum, but these things happen, and as always, whether it's individually as a player, how does he recover, which he has done, and how do teams recover from disappointment? And that was one of the things that we talked about when we were meeting up before the Premier League and talked to the players as a group. How do we overcome disappointment? How would we overcome losing games of football? Because you are going to lose games of football in this division as a newly promoted side. We haven't been used to it, obviously, with the record in the Championship over the 2 years in League One, but now this is different. This is different, and psychologically, how do we overcome that? And I've been delighted, as I said, with Dean and my team.
You told us last week that in the January transfer window you would like to strengthen. What areas of the side are you looking at? Because the team are performing so well at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's key that we strengthen, and I'll keep that to myself, Tim, if you don't mind. But it's important that we get the balance right, and we bring the right players in from a mentality point of view, and to strengthen the group, because I'm a big believer that even though it is a difficult window to work in, we've been quite successful in that window last year. The likes of Scott Hogan and Gary Medine just gave us the timely boost that we needed, and we'll need that this year. And I've said to the owners, maybe if we were a different position, then maybe keep your hand in your pocket. But I think now is a time to strengthen, and obviously, still having conversations with that regarding where we can go with that. But definitely in our position that we need to, because it's still a lot of football to be played. The intensity of the league, as we've seen from last week, was huge. Playing the game against Newcastle on the Thursday night, and then trip down to Norwich on Sunday, then fighting for their lives as well. Newcastle desperate for points, and we're all in the same situation. It will take its toll on the group. We have managed to keep the same team, and we've made a few changes now and again, a couple of little injuries, but all in all, it's been the group that came up. I believe they deserved the opportunity. They deserved to show me the work that they'd done in the summer if they could raise their game, and they certainly have done. But they need to keep that going. And as I said, there's a couple, 2 or 3 positions where I feel we're just a little bit light, where we need to strengthen and to make sure that performances and results aren't affected.
Racism came to the fore again last weekend, a number of high-profile incidents. Is there anything more that can be done from a football point of view to try and eliminate it?
Well, we have to look after our industry and make it sure it's as clean as possible. It is a society thing, from my point of view, that attaches itself to football. I don't think it's the other way around. So, of course, it's an issue, and it's very, very disappointing and sad when these things happen. So, ultimately, over to authorities that govern football and govern the way we live, because it's certainly not acceptable.
Chris, fitness-wise this week, how's everyone looking? Any fresh knocks or concerns ahead of the weekend?
No, there was a few tired bodies there on Sunday. It was a good shift second half. We looked a little bit leggy first half. Felt a little bit sorry for ourselves, maybe, which you can't afford to do. So that's a good lesson for us. And we didn't play in our normal positive self, which happens not just in football, happens in sport. Talked about it quite a lot. Sometimes we're not as good as what we'd hopefully want to be, and credit to the opposition, starting off quicker than us, more bright, more positive. But I think the big thing is how we clawed it back and how we changed that round. Could quite easily have let that game slip, but we didn't. We didn't want that to happen, and we had an opportunity affecting it second half, and we certainly did that. So, again, the recovery in this division is absolutely vital. However, the top boys go on, when they're playing Champions League games and whatever, and Wolves, the amount of games they play and the way they churn out results is so impressive because of the intensity of the division, and we're not used to that because obviously our players have not played in that environment and in the division. So that'll be good for us that we experience that. But certainly, and it is really difficult. People will look at the division that we were in and the division we're in now and just see the glossy bits of it. The areas of interest, both boxes, but just the speed and the intensity when you're close up to it, and the amount of distance they cover, and how powerful these players are, and how well they recover to go again, is really really fantastic to see and impressive. And we have to keep track with that, and we have to keep pace with that.
Has it been useful then, after 2 games in a few days, 2 big games, just to have a full week with them to just get back on the training pitch and do all that?
Yeah, we had Monday off, and they got themselves going Tuesday, and they've had plenty of recovery and rest, which is key. And then full tilt today and tomorrow into another big game on Saturday.
I was going to ask you about Jim Smith. Obviously, Chris, sad passing this week. I was at Pride Park last night. There were some fantastic tributes there. Somebody that you knew within the game,
and rightly so. I could relate to Jim because obviously he's a Sheffield boy. He was instrumental in me getting the job with Alan Hodgkinson, who's obviously got fantastic connections at this football club. And Jim is somebody I admired enormously and gave me great help when I first went down to Oxford, coming out of Sheffield. Lived in Sheffield for the majority of my life and moving down to Oxford. And he was there always, didn't miss an home game, went to away games, and he was a fantastic mentor for me. And I had a couple of bits old school Jim Smith. No, he wasn't. He was just right school. He was just a proper manager and wanted to win. Expected of his players to perform and compete. So the old school bit, I struggle sometimes to get my head round because I just think it's right school. And Jim was a proper manager, and he was in the inner circle of the top managers in this country. I once went to an LMA do with him, a young manager, and he was running the show with Sir Alex and Walter Smith and Laurie McMenemy, and so highly respected. Local connections. It was it was great for me as a young manager. We used to come in after the Oxford when I was at Oxford and come in after the game. First thing one of the first things we talk about is how United have got on and how Wednesday got on. So we had that rivalry as well. But such a fantastic man, and desperately sorry for Yvonne and the family. It's a sad miss.
For you, in terms of your career, though, has it been really useful to pick the brains of people like Jim and just take little bits and pieces from different people to help you progress as an individual?
Absolutely. It's the after he'd come in and we'd dissect the game and discuss it, and he talked through it what his thoughts were, and he was honest about it. Sometimes quite brutal at times. But there it is. You've got to get on with it, and I had that honesty from Jim, and I don't think it hurts from time to time. But it was, his record in terms of managing big clubs, the way he went about it, he had total respect from all the players that he managed. I don't think maybe a few of the weaker ones might have enjoyed him as much, but I think it toughens you up whether he's speaking to me or speaking to a player, because the game of football is a tough business, and he was a very, very talented man, very talented football man, a proper football man, loved the game, and from my point of view as a young manager, those moments with him were absolutely priceless.
Excellent start to the season, Chris. Eighth in the league. But is your focus still on getting the points for survival as that first point to achieve this year?
Yeah, just said to Tim, just the next game, and the next game, and the next game. And if we lose, can we recover? And if we win, can we go again? And can we turn draws into wins? And some losing positions into draws. So it's just an individual situation going into the next game. Things happen, you lose players through injury, suspension, and the picture changes pretty quickly. It's still a huge period, is the Christmas period for everybody. Loads of games to play, lots of points for grabs. We're in a healthy position. We'd like to cement that and move it forward, but understanding as well that one defeat can turn in this league to 2 and 3, so we have to be mindful of the fact. But being our positive self as we were second half, I was delighted. We really put the opposition on the back foot. We were aggressive. We played forward. We ran forward, and we were an effective football side. And we weren't first half. And as I said, these things sometimes happen. The backing that we had from our supporters was yet again unbelievable, phenomenal. How they got behind and lifted the players as well. And we'll need that on Saturday. And it is really important that. My players won't get complacent. It wasn't a complacency issue. It maybe was a little bit of lack of energy, and just the way we played was a little bit negative in my point of view. We just needed to tinker and play a little bit more forward and be a bit more positive in our approach. But still, you have to give credit to the opposition. It was a huge game for them as well, and one that they would have identified to get their season up and running. But it's important that supporters don't become complacent and don't start thinking, and this is easy, and this is we should be knocking over Newcastle, and Villa, we're above them, so that's another 3 points. It isn't like that at all, and it's important that my message for them is that the effect that they have had on this team as talked about from the second half at Norwich, and what they have had in home games has to be consistent, and this is another huge game for us, and the points is just as big as any time in this football club's past, and that's how we've got to approach it, every one of us.
Are you expecting that there's a little bit more of an open game than the last home game, which was pretty much one-way traffic?
I can't decide how other teams play. I always think sometimes to have a dance it takes two, but there it is, and this is something that we have to overcome. I don't think. I don't know. It might be an approach other teams to take, but it'll sound as if I'm a little bit bitter, but I'm not. I respect everybody's attitude and approach to any game, and we'll do it our way, and other teams will do it their way. But Villa have got a lot of attacking players, and as you imagine, they'll be looking at the game and setting up in the way that they want to set up. with the attacking players that they've got. I should imagine they'll want to dominate possession, and they'll want to drive us back. So I think it's a crackerjack of a game on Saturday. I think it's going to be a brilliant game for us. Villa have always, full house, sold out from their point of view, and the backing that their players will get. And as always, the talent that they've got, right the way through the team is there to be seen.
A lot of focus on Jack Grealish, of course, from their end, but they've got a lot more threats than Jack Grealish, haven't they?
Yeah, I think it'd be disrespectful. To Dean and his team. As I said, the players that they brought in the summer, I thought they had a really good group as well. That got them out of the division and the run that they went on. John McGinn, Conuran, they bought Tyrone Mings, they bought a really good goalkeeper in Tommy, and players that they've got Target, right the way through the team, spent at the top of the pitch. Got Kodja on the bench, and obviously Jack is a fantastic player and a star of their team and the heartbeat of their team. So, he's key to them. So we have to defend well. We have to wrap him up. We have to wrap their front boys up, and making sure that we play in the way that we did second half at Norwich. That we go and cause their back four a problem in the way we go and play in possession.
Obviously, there's some comparisons with Billy and yourself here being Blades and Dean and Jack at their end. Obviously, it means a little bit more to you all, but does that add more in terms of sort of personal expectation and that will and want to win?
Well, obviously, I was up close and personal in the playoff final, and did a bit of media work and saw the reaction afterwards. How those two guys felt, you just looked at their eyes and they were shattered. The amount of work that they put into, obviously Dean in terms of preparation, and John Terry, who's a really good guy. Come across him a couple of times at Villa. His input's big, and from Jack's point of view, his performance and how desperate he was for his team to get into the Premier League, and he'll be as desperate as he was then to make sure they cement themselves in the division as well as Dean. So yeah, it does bring that expectation, it does bring that added pressure, but certainly Jack's performances he's handled that superbly well, and it's a huge football club in a big city, so he's obviously got stick. There was an incident last year that obviously was very, very unsavoury, but how he reacted to that, and his performances, and the team's performances. So it is, but you have to handle it and use it to your advantage, and certainly Jack and Dean have, and that's what me and Billy have tried to do here.
Thanks, Chris.
Cheers.
Chris,
can I just ask you?
Sorry, John.
There you go.
Has Mo Besic given you a bit of a selection headache?
Yeah, it's great. Everybody was delighted for Mo. It's been difficult. It's been difficult for all those players. Jags has had a little bit of a taste of it, but there's Kieran Freeman, Ben Osborne, Mo. The front boys have had a little bit more of a go than maybe the likes of Ravel and Mo and the boys that I've talked about. They've had more of an opportunity because we've mixed it up a little bit up the top of the pitch. But I think that just yet again shows the professionalism that Mo has, and the commitment to the group. And when he come on, I thought he was outstanding. He was a calm, cool head in quite a heated period of the game. When the situation with Bash and our turnaround, and it was a lively old game, and we protected Ollie. We just felt that it was a mistimed tackle off coming off or getting sent off, but Mo went on and was calm and was energetic and was mobile and was great, and delighted for Mo. And it's good to see Mo up close and in the thick of things.
Chris, you mentioned earlier about the strength, the pace of the Premier League. Are you surprised with the way that your players, who hadn't got experience of Premier League football, have actually adapted and coped with it?
Well, we're going into the unknown, won't we? So delighted that they have done, and it's all down to them and their sort of commitment to the task and the opportunity, and in the way they've coped with it, it's been first class. I think you do get found out on the stuff that you talked about, John. If you don't do the work, if we don't condition the boys, and they've not got that attitude to go with it, then they wouldn't have played in the manner that they have done. So, obviously people talk about the tactical part of the game and the technical part of the game, which is huge in the division, but all the other bits and pieces that you've talked about, for those things to happen, you have to have the base to go from, and boys have certainly upped their game through the summer and the early part of the year.
You mentioned also the tactics. At the start of the season, a lot was being talked about the way you played, and you were being given credit for that. But now a lot of attention's being focused on actually the players themselves, how good they are. Are you pleased about that?
Yeah, I think we've always been a team. We're not a team of superstars. Boys go about their jobs and contribute in terms of the team working and the team doing well. And in that, obviously under the scrutiny of the Premier League and all that it brings, players are going to get noticed and highlighted with really good performances and especially you score. So obviously, John, you're the agent for Enda Stevens and George Baldock, and they're doing great, but they're under contract at Sheffield United. They just got to keep the standards going, all of them, to stay in the team because of the likes of Mo and all the other boys that I've spoke about, keeping them honest in their performances on the toes.
Chris, Graham Potter signed a new contract recently, only joined Brighton in the summer. Dean Smith has signed a new deal recently. Given the continued success that you've had here, have you had any talks about a new deal?
No.
Would you like to have some talks about a new deal?
Well, I'm contracted to the football club, and I'll work as hard as I have done. I've got a desire and passion to take the club forward, of course, and as I said, I had a renegotiation in the summer on promotion. I had a renegotiation when we got promoted out of League One, and obviously I signed a new contract after the Bristol City game. So, contrary to people thinking that I've signed about 3 or 4 contracts, 2 of them have been renegotiations on success. But head down and get on with my job. And if the club or when the club want to speak to me, that's over to them. It's not something that I'm going to go knocking on their door for.
But many would say that you're arguably the club's greatest asset at the moment, and it is important, isn't it, for the club to keep its assets?
Yeah, it is. So, as I said, whatever people think of me and the job I've done, we just get as heads down as staff, myself and Alan and all the staff, just as much as the players. And I've always said regarding players' situations, we'll be the one that comes to them. So I think that's the same from the club's point of view to me or any of the staff. And in the meantime, as I said, Rob, just head down and get on with my job. And delighted that we've got a platform to go from. 22 points after the set amount of games that we've had is a really solid start, and we have to build on that. And we can't start looking ahead too far. Keep going and see where that takes us.
All good. A little bit for Saturdays, James?
Yeah.
There you go.